module, we're going to cover human development across the lifespan. So I'm recording the screencast for this module, in which we'll cover, firstly, this set of learning outcomes. We'll outline the major events that occur during the 3 stages of prenatal development. We'll summarize the impact of environmental factors on prenatal development, and we'll describe the role of maturation and experience in motor development. So let's start with the first stage of prenatal development, which is the germinal stage. So it starts with conception, or the fertilization of the sperm cell and ovum, known as the zygote. Once it forms a single cell, it is a zygote. And this is the first stage of prenatal development that lasts approximately 2 weeks, during which the dividing mass of cells from the zygote becomes implanted in the uterine wall. So again, conception begins with fertilization of the sperm cell and the ovum or egg cell, and it forms a single cell, the zygote. And then the zygote repeatedly divides through mitosis as it proceeds what's estimated to be a 3 to 4 day travel to the uterus. And then as it keeps dividing into multiple cells, it keeps dividing and then implants itself into the uterine wall. So this implantation takes another week or so. So that's the second week of the germinal stage, followed by the second stage, which is the embryonic stage. So the embryonic stage lasts from implantation until about the 8th week of development. So from week 3 to 8 weeks, that's the embryonic stage. And so during the second stage, the major body structures and organ systems begin to develop. And the growth of the head, as you can see here, the growth of the head develops more rapidly or precedes that of the other parts of the body. And this is called a cephalocaudal pattern of development. So a cephalocaudal pattern of development is a sequence in which the earliest growth always occurs at the top. So cephalo is Greek for head. So the earliest growth always occurs at the top. So it begins with the head, and physical growth and differentiation of the features gradually work their way down from top to bottom. So it's cephalocaudal, top to bottom. So greatest growth occurs at the top, at the head, and it works its way down to the neck, to the shoulders, to the middle trunk, and so on. So you can see, one second please. Right, so you can see by week 8 here, the head is well rounded, the facial features are prominent or they're clearly defined, and this occurs within an embryo that's about 2.5 centimeters and weighs very little at that point. But the development of the head precedes that of the rest of the body. So it happens at a much more quicker pace. So then we have the third stage, which is the fetal stage. And so this is the third stage of development in the prenatally, that is delineated by, that starts at week 9, gestation age, so week 9 to birth. And birth is 38 to 40 weeks on average. So this is when there's further growth of the body and organ systems that continue, and this is especially salient or prominent in the heart and the lungs in the final 3 months, and would allow the fetus to thrive outside of the womb, because the cranial nerves that control the heart and the lungs are, of course, part of the central nervous system in the head. So it's important that those develop especially during that stage, there's a marked growth during that stage. Okay, so then we have here when we're going to focus a little bit more on the fetal development. Okay, so we'll continue. So it's important to note that uh, by week 7, which is towards the end of the embryonic stage, the genetic code begins to assert itself. And so, in the presence of the Y sex chromosome, the gonads will differentiate into testes. And so, these reproductive organs, the testicles, the gonads, will start developing testosterone. And testosterone will masculinize the external genitalia and will also masculinize the brain. And so, at week 9 starts the fetal stage, and as I mentioned earlier, this is the stage of prenatal development that during which there's a further growth of the body and the organ systems, and this is especially in the heart and the lungs, and would allow survival of the fetus outside the womb. Now, by the end of the 3rd month, so the 3rd month, about here, the end of the 3rd month, the major organ systems and the fingers and toes have formed. By the end of the 6th month, the the fetus will start to move its body quite regularly, and by this time it will also start to open and shut its eyes. So just by the end of 6 months, it will start to open and shut its eyes. It will suck its thumb. It will alternate between periods of being awake and asleep. So its circadian rhythm will start to manifest as well, and it will respond to light. So now we're going to focus on the environmental factors and prenatal development. So I'm just going to switch my pages here. Okay, so prenatal development, as I mentioned earlier, is a time, through the slides we've covered, is a time of rapid physical growth. But this growth may be interrupted by negative environmental factors or fetus. So what is a teratogen? A teratogen is a harmful or toxic agent such as disease, a drug, a chemical, or radiation that has the potential to cause birth defects or abnormalities to the developing fetus. So we have some teratogens here. Alcohol. So alcohol consumption during pregnancy can lead to a child being born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So this is marked by the slowed growth of the physical body and heart damage. And so it's likely caused by interruptions to growth of the heart, of the cardiovascular system and body structures during the embryonic stage. So these are the effects on the fetus. Cigarette smoking also produces higher risk for sudden infant death syndrome. So another important teratogen, cigarette smoking, it interrupts or disrupts the growth of the development of the internal organs that are important for survival, that are important for bodily functioning, such as cardiovascular and pulmonary functions, and also can lead to low birth weight. And finally, cocaine also is associated with detrimental effects on the developing fetus, so can lead to risk of miscarriage and detachment of the placenta. Now there are others, so syphilis or even herpes. So maternal illness of having syphilis or condition such as herpes can also lead to premature birth and damage to the central nervous system. Severe influenza weight. So similar effects to those of syphilis. Now, maternal nutrition is also an environmental factor that influences prenatal development, because studies have found that malnutrition is linked to increased risk of birth complications, neurological problems, and psychopathologies. Now, we talked about physical development prenatally, and the two patterns that direct physical development are as follows: the cephalocaudal pattern and the proximal distal pattern. We mentioned those earlier during the prenatal development because they guide physical growth, but they also apply to motor development. They're also applicable to motor development during infancy. So, congruent with the following pattern, motor development occurs and reaches certain milestones in terms of the simple to complex tasks, motor skills that children, newborns, can demonstrate along these, in congruency with these patterns of development. So let's describe them on a physical plane or in a physical dimension. A cephalocaudal pattern is a developmental sequence in which the earliest growth occurs at the top, so with the head, and physical growth and differentiation of features gradually working their way from the top to the bottom. So cephalocaudal is head to foot, so top to bottom. Proxima distal occurs in parallel. The proxima distal pattern occurs in parallel to that of the cephalocaudal pattern. And so it describes the developmental sequence in which the earliest growth starts at the center of the body. So the organs, the systems, so it starts with the head, development of the eyes, and then the heart, the lungs, the middle, the upper trunk, the middle trunk, and so on. But proximal distance is developmental sequence. The earliest growth starts at the center of the body and moves towards the extremities. Okay, so this is applicable to two developmental periods: the physical development that starts prenatally and the motor development that now occurs postnatally. So children will progress in their motor skills with the same by way of these same patterns, cephalocaudal pattern and proximal distal pattern. So they'll be able to move. They'll be able to move their head. They'll be able to move their upper trunk with more ease before they're able to show fine dexterity or move their fingers and their toes. Okay, so now we're going to look at the role of maturation and experience on motor development. Okay, so now we'll focus on postnatal motor development, so motor development in newborns. And so motor development is characterized by a progression from simple skills like lifting the head to complex skills such as walking. And we know the motor milestones that newborns reach are quite impressive. They happen quickly and during the first year of life. So it is evident that both maturation and environment play key roles in motor development. So the role of maturation, which is the unfolding of the biological blueprint in physical development, is clear because you see variations in gains in height, in gains in weight, and later on there are variations that are based on the effects of puberty. And so the important role of maturation, or the unfolding of the biological blueprint, is manifest from early life. Experience and factors such as nutrition, relatively good air quality, the opportunity to engage in physical activity, those variables also factor in and influence whether a child's genetic potential will be expressed. So, for example, some children do not reach their genetic potential unless those environmental factors that we've just described are present in during their growth. With this set of slides, the second set. So these are the learning outcomes. We'll describe the theories on attachment as proposed by John Bowlby, Harry Harlow, and Mary Ainsworth. Will describe the basic tenets of Erikson's theory and his stages of childhood personality. We'll describe Piaget and Vygotsky's theories of cognitive development. We'll review the physiological changes that take place during puberty. We'll describe identity formation in adolescence and personality development in adulthood. So, excuse me. We've looked at physical development, we've looked at motor development, and now we're going to look at emotional development, early life emotional development. And so early life emotional development is influenced by the infant's social interactions. And arguably, the infant's first social interactions are with his or her primary caregiver. And so John Bowlby is recognized as the first attachment theorist. And he focused on the attachment that is formed between a newborn, an infant, and its mother, or the mother-infant attachment, mother-infant bond. So he defines attachment as the emotional bond between a human infant or a young non-human animal and its parent figure or caregiver. And so it is marked by a dependency of the newborn on the primary caregiver. So this attachment is developed as a step in establishing a feeling of security, and it is demonstrated by calmness while in the parent's or caregiver's presence. So what behaviors would an infant show? Well, an infant, the behavior that defines attachment includes an attempt to maintain contact or nearness with a parent figure or caregiver, and the infant, be it a human or non-human animal, would show anxiety when separated from the primary caregiver. So attachment keeps organisms together, and it is vital to the survival of the infant. And it tends to endure. It lasts. It endures in time. So, as I mentioned earlier, Bowlby is regarded or recognized as the first attachment theorist. And his theory is based on the joint work by himself and Mary Ainsworth. And his theory postulates that there's an evolutionary advantageous need, especially in primates, who much like humans attend to and nurse their young after postnatally. So it's an evolutionary advantageous need, especially in primates, to form close social bonds with significant others, specifically a need for the young to maintain close proximity to and form bonds with their caregivers. And it also characterizes the different types of relationships between human infants and caregivers, meaning that it varies. Qualitatively, it takes different forms. It's manifested in it takes different characteristics, as we will see later on with Mary Ainsworth's work. Okay. So this is the theory by John Bowlby. Again, it includes both it postulates two important points: the need, especially in primates, so human and non-human primates, to form close emotional bonds with significant others, specifically the need for the young to maintain close proximity to and form bonds with their caregivers. And attachment also characterizes the different types of relationship between human infants and caregivers. And that's going to be based on Mary Ainsworth's work later on. So let's look at the academic context or the cultural context in which these theories grew or developed. So many of at the time, in the 1950s and the 1960s, when John Bowlby started to write this theory and published it, psychological research in the US was dominated by behaviorism. So behaviorists were sort of occupied mainstream thinking, mainstream psychology at the time. And their view was that infants or babies become attached to their mothers because mothers provide food. So the earliest attachment that you see between a newborn and a mother was merely a means for the child to obtain food or to experience a relief from their thirst or to avoid pain. So it was just a way. The attachment was reinforced by the nourishment that the mother provided. So this was the earliest view or the dominant view at the time, that attachment behaviors are learned through experience, where caregivers feed their infants and tend to their physiological needs. So there's an association, a sort of operant conditioning or instrumental learning that underlies the formation of this attachment or this bond. So according to the behavioral perspective, infants associate their caregivers with gratification of their needs, and they learn to approach them to meet their needs or to get their needs met. So that was the theory or the academic context in which John Bowlby's and Harry Harlow's and then Mary Ainsworth's work. So we'll continue. Harry Harlow, during the same period, also sought to investigate the influences that contributed to the mother-infant attachment. So again, attachment is what keeps organisms together. It is vital to an organism's survival, and it tends to endure. And so Dr. Harlow sought to investigate why infants bond with their mother. How is it that this attachment, this bond formation occurs? What variables are influencing bond formation in infants? And so he hypothesized that infants seek what he described as contact comfort, which is a hypothesized primary drive to seek physical comfort through contact with another. And so because at the time the view was dominated by the behavioral perspective, the view on attachment was dominated by the behavioral perspective, Harlow argued that this perspective overlooked the importance of comfort, the importance of companionship or mother-infant comfort in healthy development. So in order to systematically investigate the role of contact comfort in the formation of mother-infant bonds, he carried out this experiment. Firstly, infant monkeys were separated from their biological mother, and they were placed in a cage with two surrogate mothers. So he called these surrogate mothers. They're inanimate objects, but for the purpose of the experiment, they were described as surrogate mother. So one surrogate mother was made of a wire. So here's the wire mother, and the other was covered in soft terry cloth. So those were the two surrogate mothers, and then there were two groups of monkeys. One group of monkeys could get milk from the cloth mother. The other could get milk only from the wire mother. Okay? So what the experiment demonstrated, they left the monkeys with those two surrogate mothers. And what the experiment showed, the data revealed that regardless of the feeding arrangement, all infant monkeys spent significantly more time with, the cloth mother. And this was an important finding because it demonstrated that attachment is not based on the simple satisfaction of hunger. Because if that were the case, baby monkeys would have spent as much time with their wire mother who provided the milk. Okay, but in fact, they preferred to spend time with the terry cloth mother. And so from this, Harlow concluded this first conclusion that it's not based on the simple satisfaction of hunger. Secondly, monkeys and perhaps humans have an inborn need for contact comfort that is as basic as the need for food. And thirdly, the gratification of the need for contact comfort rather than food might be why infant monkeys and humans cling to their mothers. And so this was a very important finding at the time, especially because if you put this in a social context as well, children who were raised in orphanages were experiencing, were showing difficulties emotionally in adapting within school settings and family settings. So this observation of children in orphanages had a strong impact on attachment theory. So this was particularly influential because researchers thought that early social experience might affect how humans and monkeys emotionally react. And they may react similarly. And that's because humans and monkeys have comparable body structure, comparable function, and both baby monkeys and human infants are raised and nursed by their mother. And that's why this research was so influential on defining describing the parameters, the important variables that influence mother-infant bond. So babies and how does this manifest in the children? Babies and children will maintain eye contact with their caregivers to whom they're attached. So they show eye contact. They pull and tug at them, ask to be picked up, and may even jump in front of them in such a way that they might be run over if they're not picked up. And so infants, this contact comfort is important.